and welcome to Transforming Language Education, the vodcast series where we will talk about the future of teaching, inquiry, and advocacy in language education. I'm Jen Crawford.
And I'm Rob Philback. Please like or subscribe if you want to join us in helping to transform language education.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Emmy, who is an expert in language education with a focus on teaching strategies and approaches. Dr. Min, I'd love to talk to you more about some of your research and some of how this shapes your own teaching. Particularly, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what you found on how do Korean high school students use communicative strategies when communicating with an authority figure in English.
Sure. This was research that I conducted at a school that I used to teach in as a high school teacher. And I became a professor and I went back to the school to collect more data. And then these students, high school students, knew me as their teacher, an authoritative figure, and a professor now, because all of these students wanted to go to America or English medium countries to study further. So this was the relationship they had with me. And I reviewed and analyzed a series of email correspondence between these students and me, and also the letters that they wrote to me and as sources of data. And it was interesting, and that all the letters were written in English, and there are advanced language learners, because these are very academically very advanced high school, and these students are being trained to go to English medium countries, so their English was good. But it was very surprising and to me, and also I kind of expected it, but I didn't think that they'll be using these strategies extensively. That's derived from the Korean letters writing strategies. So they were, for example, they were using strategies that some of the researchers would call buffering. So they would use a lot of buffers. They would use a lot of buffers at the beginning of the letters and before conveying the core ideas that they wanted to convey with me. And these core ideas, depending on what it is, I mean, they were using more buffers at the beginning or towards the end too, and using a sandwich method to do that. And the reason why they were doing that was because they didn't want to undermine the reader's authority, and they wanted to elevate the status of the person who's reading this letter. And they knew me as someone who's familiar with their culture. So they kind of thought that this would be an opportunity for them to not use, quote unquote American style of writing, but revert back to the Korean style of writing. And yet they'd be using target language, which is English in this case.
It's so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have students, of course, all over the world that are dealing with power differences in, their role as students vis-a-vis their teachers, but then there's also the cultural differences. So in the case you're talking about, I'm imagining they probably use these strategies with their their English-speaking teachers perhaps as well. And that might be something that goes unnoticed by many of the folks that they're, working with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, exactly. So one of my findings and one of my recommendations as a result of this study is that teachers need to be aware of these strategies that students are using. And sometimes students use it without realizing that they're using these strategies. So you really need to make it explicit as a teacher, for the students to know that they're using these strategies. And sometimes they'll be using these strategies and think this will work in different contexts, but it's not the case. If you want to be successful in different contexts, and you want to be mindful of the audience, you want to be mindful of the tone and style of the writing and so on and so forth. So that's really important, first of all. And so what's empowering for these students is to know these different strategies, and they knowing like when to use what strategies. And also, so this is really important. So sometimes it goes goes unnoticed by the teachers. So knowing the strategies and making it explicit for the students so that they can choose amongst different strategies, and then in a context that's appropriate for them, I think that would really empower them as a writer and a communicator in different multilingual communication.
I'm curious if you could give an example of how you've seen or how you yourself have supported international students studying in American universities to negotiate these power relationships in their English communication and writing.
That's a great question. I want to build on that because just as an example, in an effort to make my syllabus and my class more friendly and warm and equitable, I do talk with my students about what they can call me, and some of them may feel very uncomfortable calling me by my first name, which some domestic students are fine doing. But I'm sure there's a lot of strategies that I could be using and other professors and teachers in the field could be using to have this be more of an open conversation with our students. I'd love your thoughts.
So some of the things that I've done in the past in my classes, when I have international students in my classes, I would just let them know about different styles of writing and different multilingual strategies. And for example, I talk to my students coming from China. I tell them in the papers that you are used to writing back in China, I mean, you tend to not give away your thesis in your introduction, and you wait until the very end. That's what you're used to, right? It's a circular type of writing style in Chinese language, and same in Korean language as well, that you would want to not give it away at the beginning of your writing, but wait until the very end. You develop your rationale, and wait until the very end to give your conclusion. But it's not like that in American writing. You want to give your thesis at the very beginning, and then you want to work towards the end to develop it further with evidence. And that's the kind of writing that we're expecting. So I try to communicate with the students' expectations and make it explicit and compare and contrast, and this way that they will be using their critical perspectives to try to understand, and also try to give suggestions on and also they ask questions actively to me. I mean, is this okay for me to use this and that? So I can give some tips and strategies and suggestions on how they can maneuver within different types of writings and also communication styles too. And sometimes I give that suggestions, and I use what we call accommodation strategies and then assimilation. We're not asking students to assimilate into a culture or different styles of writing or speaking or communicative patterns, but we're asking them to accommodate based on different expectations and contexts. It's not that they like that strategy, or it's not that they like the expectations, but they need to learn to be successful in different contexts, and this would empower them as a learner.
Fascinating.
It's so fascinating. And how you bring together sort of the synthesis of cultural and linguistic strategies and genre-specific norms, I think is so interesting. And I think it's an inspiration both for those teachers who have students in their classroom whose language and cultural practices they might not know a lot about, and also for us to, as a challenge for those of us who might share cultural and language practices with their students, and making sure we have space for both sets. It's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We'll link below. We'll provide a link for this fantastic article that I think provides so many excellent implications for our own teaching of diverse learners and supporting their language and cultural awareness in their writing, speaking, listening skills. Thank you very much, Dr. Min.
Thank you, Dr. Min.
Thank you.